Welcome back, everyone. So we have talked about how tetrapods developed. We talked about Tiktaalik a little bit and the evolution of amphibians. Now let's get into the amniotes. Amniotes are all tetrapods. They all have they all have four legs. Their extant members are the reptiles, including the birds and the mammals. So here we still see we are gnathostomes, we are technically osteichthyans, we are tetrapods, we are amniotes. And this group is named after their amniotic egg, which is a major derived character of the clade. And if we're here looking at here, we have our ancestral amniote, and you can see all of these lineages that we have coming from amniotes. So this amniotic egg is a major adaptation for life on land, as it reduced the dependence on water for reproduction. You might have noticed in a lot of that amphibian videos that we were watching, they had to lay their eggs where it was wet, that their egg was dependent on water. But the other abilities that we have for terrestrial living include the ability to use a rib cage to ventilate the lungs, and also we have less dependence on gas exchange through the skin. We are able to breathe with our lungs. This means that skin becomes less permeable, which means that water is less likely to leave our body through our skin, so we conserve the moisture inside our body as we're in a terrestrial habitat. In an amniotic egg, the egg has 4 extra embryonic membranes. That means outside of the embryo, there are 4 membranes. The first is the amnion, and that would be this blue one here around the embryo. The amnion encloses the embryo in a fluid-filled sac. Next, we have the chorion. The chorion is responsible for gas exchange, so allowing oxygen in and carbon dioxide out, gas exchange between the embryo and the environment. The yolk sac, which contains nutrients for the development and first blood cells for the embryo. And the allantois, which is, my pointer's disappeared. The allantois, which is going to be providing waste storage for the embryo. Many amniotic eggs have a shell. When we're looking at our reptiles, including our birds, that have a shell. But most mammals have lost the shell and developed this embryo within the mother's body. The living amphibians and amniotes split from a common ancestor about 350 million years ago. The early amniotes would have been living in warm, moist areas, but as those adaptations we discussed started occurring, they were able to expand into more diverse environments over time. The first amniotes were likely predators that looked like small lizards with sharp teeth. And I do want to throw out there a reminder that as we're talking about lizards, these are not the same as the salamanders. The lizards are our reptiles. The salamanders we talked about are our amphibians. After developing lizards, then later groups included herbivores that had grinding teeth. Okay, so what are some of those amniotic adaptations to be able to live on land? What did reptiles, birds, mammals, what are adaptations we have that allow us to live on land? Okay, the first order we're going to look at our reptilia, or class we're going to look at our reptilia. Reptiles include our tuateras, lizards, snakes, turtles, crocodilians, and birds. The extinct groups include the dinosaurs. Most reptiles are squamates. That includes the lizards and the snakes. There's about 10,000 species of that. And birds, which are about 10,000 species. Most of them have scales that create a waterproof barrier. In birds, those scales have developed into being feathers. Most lay shelled eggs on the land. And fertilization occurs internally. That means daddy is depositing his sperm inside of the mama's body. And then that occurs before the eggshell is secreted. So the embryo is fertilized, and then the eggshell develops around that. So most reptiles are ectothermic. That means they absorb external heat as the main source of body heat. So they're going to regulate their body temperature through their behaviors. So when they're cold, they're going to go bask in the sun to increase their temperature. If they're too hot, they'll move to the shade to decrease their body temperature. Birds, however, are endothermic. That means they maintain their body temperature through their metabolic activity. Whether they're in the sun or in the shade, they should have a constant body temperature. The earliest reptiles were diapsids that resembled lizards. They lived about 300 million years ago. And diapsids have a pair of holes on either side of their head, on either side of the skull, and this is where muscles are able to attach to the jaw. And diapsids are composed of 3 different lineages. We have turtles, lepidosaurs, and archosaurs. The lepidosaurs include living tuateras, lizards, and snakes, also the extinct mosasaurs. Archosaurs include the living crocodilians and the extinct pterosaurs and dinosaurs. So pterosaurs were the first tetrapods that had flapping flight. They had a membrane that extended, well, if you can see here, they had a membrane that stretched between the long digit on their foreleg and on the trunk or the hind leg to form the wing. On land, the dinosaurs were diversifying into a variety of shapes and sizes. So herbivores were dinosaurs that had evolved adaptations like tail clubs and horn crests for defense. The theropods were bipedal, that means they walked on 2 legs. They were carnivores. They included things like T-Rex, also the ancestors of birds. In our turtles, we have 351 known species. They are most closely related to crocodilians and birds. They have lots of holes in their skull that are characteristics of most diapsids. They have this box-like shell that has an upper and a lower plate that are fused to their vertebra. So this isn't something that they just come in and out of. This is actually part of their body, fused to their vertebra and to their clavicles and ribs. And the shell was acquired over stages over several millions of years. And there's 2 different lineages of turtles that have independently evolved ways to move their head into their shell. There are side neck turtles that fold their neck to the side horizontally, and vertical neck turtles that fold their neck vertically right in. Here's a Galapagos tortoise. Next, we have the tuatera. These are the surviving lineage of lepidosaurs, and they're lizard-like. They are restricted to about 30 islands off the coast of New Zealand. However, they are threatened because rats have been introduced to the island, and the rats go and eat their eggs, which means there's not as many babies being born. Squamates are lizards and snakes, and there's about 10,000 species of them. They can range in size from just 16 millimeters, that's tiny, the Jaragua lizard, all the way up to the Komodo dragon, which is 3 meters long. That's about 3 yards long. That's pretty big. Snakes have descended from lizards with legs, and they do retain their vestigial pelvic and limb bones, but they don't actually have legs coming out from their body, as you can see. And they move about on land by making these waves of lateral bending from head to toe. They also have belly scales that they can use to kind of grip along the ground to kind of pull themselves forward. Here's an iguana. And then here are snakes doing a ritual wrestling. Sorry, I can't talk tonight. So are snakes tetrapods? I want you to think about your answer here. Are they tetrapods? Next we have crocodilians. Crocodilians are alligators and crocodiles, and their lineage dates all the way back to the late Triassic. The early species were small terrestrial quadrupeds. Then they moved back into the water and became larger. And there are 24 species of living crocodilians. They are restricted to warm regions of the globe. We should not see alligators and crocodiles here in Northeast Tennessee. Okay, I will pick up talking about our birds in our next video. See you soon. Bye.